But let me start from Anthill, right? When you were building Anthill, what vision did you have in mind starting up Anthill?
I wanted to build the Disney of Africa. It was as simple as that. So initially, it was, and most people, except they know our story very well, do not know this. The vision wasn't even Nollywood per se, as you know it is now. It was two things. We really loved animation. You know, the reason I'm into filmmaking is because I found animation first. So I fell in love with animation, and I thought that this is something nobody's doing in Hollywood. You know, I was always looking for something nobody's doing, so that I can be the first. I had that complex, but there was also a second thing. We realized that there was a skill set that we had, me and a couple of my friends. We could do really good work with computers in those early days when there were very few people that could do it. We could do great editing, visual effects, motion graphics, and all that. The only people that were doing stuff like that were people in commercials and music videos back then. So this would be like the mid 2000s and all that. So we're going to start a company. It was just me and a couple of my friends, and we were very hardworking people. So we called it Anthill, so that everybody just works to serve the purpose of the queen, which is the company. And we thought that we would only work on projects that were unique, that were special, but that also allowed us to do the things nobody was doing. So that was why my first project was Kajala, the science fiction movie and all that. So that was really the first, push. And so you see that over time, it has always been, if there's an opportunity to try something different, it will be Anthill.
Yes.
But also, because that resonated to when people are looking for someone to help them, fix their problems, when it comes to film and all of that, they would always come to Anthill. When people wanted to try out bold ideas with skill, they would always reach out to Anthill. So that had always been the core. But as we evolved, we started realizing that we could be a lot more than just a servicing company, and we started thinking about productions, creating our own IP, and immediately that struck. We're like, if we're going to do this at all, we are going to do unique IPs, and we're going to do stuff that not only resonates but inspires a lot of other people to do work.
Starting out in your career as a filmmaker, what is one thing that broke you?
A lot of things.
But which one really stood out and more?
Of course, the first one that broke me is, my first film. I put in so much work in that film, so much heart, but it was a film that wasn't ready for its time. We didn't have all the skill sets to execute it very well. But I was just a young filmmaker. I was in my mid 20s, and the attack was brutal. It wasn't, now I see people do films that are below par and they still have one or two people defend them. In my own time, it wasn't like that. They attacked, they abused it, and it was meant to break me, but luckily I had a great support system then. So after that time, I don't think anything has, been able to break me. Like, it's always a good thing when you get all the punches when you're starting early. It prepares you for the future. For every filmmaker, the biggest hit you get is when you put in so much work to a film and either people do not see it or people do not even appreciate the work that goes into it. And you can complain all you want, but that's just the nature of the business. And the upside to that is that sometimes the films that you didn't even put too much effort, that's not the film everybody is excited about. And that's why you need to keep making films, because you just never know which one, is going to be that film.
Okay. So speaking of that, right, we've spoken about Anthill a little. I spoke with many people at Anthill. So if you are to reinvest more into Anthill right now, what department in Anthill do you think you still want to put in a chunk of money in?
That's interesting. Because we have almost every part of the production pipeline in-house. I would say that the part that, if we had all the money, to kind of like build out properly would be development. That's, story development, more writers, stronger, writing room sessions where we can flesh out a lot more great stuff that's really needed. So you have a lot of people with some talent for writing, but it doesn't mean they know how to write for screen. And you want to be able to develop that. The other thing is to have a kind of collective where you have like really good directors that you can groom. I was doing that, but unfortunately, I was doing that because we had a series of projects that were lined up, with Amazon Prime Video and even Netflix, but, that didn't go again. So I was grooming a group of about 10 directors, where we're doing very intense training just to prepare them for the ability to make, really big films, when the time came. The third part I would say is probably one of my favorite part of production, and that's production design. It would be nice to have bigger sound stages. I want to make a film that happens in places people can never film or imagine filming in. I want to film underwater in a big giant pool that is built in the studio. So those would be the things that I would put money on, because I know they would let me do the kind of stories that I care about, and it would also get a lot more hands involved in production, which I also love to do. I love to employ a lot of people when we're working on films.
So do you really think the audience, do you think they are ready? Both audience and more filmmakers in Hollywood, do you think they are ready to pay for quality production?
Well, it's a subjective question. If you're asking in Nigeria, but it's also a very interesting question, because we've seen that one of the big issues is that, the middle class is almost gone. Like, people don't have that disposable income. So it really doesn't matter. They're just there to see whatever is out there and is free or cheap or available, rather than commit to it. Nigerians, on one hand, have been groomed for freebies a lot. We're a very subsidized nation. We do not believe we should pay extra for anything. That's, just kind of like the mindset that has been there for a while. But it doesn't mean that people naturally aren't seeking, better quality stuff. But you must also ask yourself a question. A generation that grew up primarily on VHS tapes, most of us, at my age, most of the films we saw before the 2010s or mid-2010s, when the cinema started coming and all that, we either saw them on VHS or we saw them on TV. We don't even know if the TVs licensed those films. But, after news every night, MITV, NBI, LTV channel, that's where we saw. We saw them for free. We never really paid money. Like the films that transformed me and changed my life, I saw them for free on TV. None of it were the things that I paid for. We moved on from that era to the VCD, DVD era, where almost everyone saw films pirated, 9 in 1, 10 in 1. Okay, so follow that trajectory. So you've had VHS, which were, before a film gets to VHS, it's in cinema, it's done a lot of rounds, it gets to VHS, the ones that they were making in Nigeria weren't that high quality in terms of technical quality, but the stories were great. And then we had television, and then we saw a lot of films on television. And then we had pirated CDs and DVDs. How do you expect those people to grow a taste to pay 20,000 naira to go see a film? So that's something we're not talking about enough. And I know this is true because I spend some of my time outside the country, and even outside the country, the Nigerians there don't want to pay for Nigerian films. They can argue this if you put this out there, but a sizable number of Nigerians there, if you visit their homes, they will tell you that they love their films on YouTube, or the Nigerian films on YouTube. That's the one they like. And when you tell them, oh, but there's this, lovely one, are you willing to pay, to watch this one? You start hearing stories, if and that's how you know, because if we've experimented this thing where we take some of our films and buy out some cinemas halls, so we get people, but we know that if we do not bring a celebrity to drive it, people are not going to come out. So they're not coming out because they're like, oh my God, this film is worth showing in a big cinema. Here, we're going to go and see it. Well, we have a taste already that isn't like our counterparts abroad. I mean, these were people who watched the rise of cinema. Yeah. Cinema had always been positioned to them as the ideal art form, where this is the best work of this person. This is where you are going to see. And for those of you who miss it and did not get to see this great thing, there is DVD for you down there. Yeah, but the DVD was, and we didn't even get the original. We watched it as a pile of film. So that says something about the taste of people. So you see that even when you make a really great film, in what is regarded as great, whether it's the storytelling itself and all that, it just because you did it doesn't guarantee that people are going to come see it.
That's true. Because really, I can actually tell that my people would rather watch something for free.
And it's not even the fault of the people. It is how we've been groomed, to appreciate film, which is why something like Immersia is very important, because we're saying now that this is a direct experience, appreciate the art for the art form itself as you experience it.
I was actually coming to Immersia, right? Immersia was the next thing I was going to talk about. So talking of Immersia, I've seen Immersia and I'm mind blown. It's not something I have seen before, and it's great. So my question is, Immersia, like, what does it take to build Immersia as an experience? And the financial implication of it, what does it, how does it take?
It takes a lot of guts, I would say reckless guts. But let me tell you something that people also probably do not know. I'm a science buff. When I was growing up as a teenager, I wanted to be an inventor. I liked building new things. I don't like copying stuff. I remember I used to, argue and fight with cinema operators and distributors that maybe the reason we're not doing great is because we did not invent our own, exhibition strategy. Who says a film should be 2 hours or 3 hours to like an Oyinbo film? Who says the cinema should be inside big malls? Why are we doing, Indians can run film for 4 hours with intermission in between. They don't necessarily follow those rules. Almost every aspect of how we experience art was invented by someone. Somebody figured out how to project films. And then they sat down like, let's charge people, to gather and they'll be watching trains moving, or an elephant being electrocuted. And as that grew on, people were like, this thing that they are doing in theater, okay, if we put camera in front of it, we might actually be selling it to people. And then they invented, the part of cinema that started adding narratives to it. And then as that was going on, people were like, as this action is going on, what if we put an orchestra? They started picking different things and mashing it together. What if we put an orchestra there and people are playing live, okay? And then you had cinema that had, score to it. And then color TV was happening, and then they made that happen. Then while all of that was happening, somebody was like, you know what? We love cartoons and drawings. What if we found a way to make all these cartoons come alive? And somebody invented that form, and it became what we call animation, and it became something that could be shown, in cinema. Remember, while all of this was happening, theaters were still running, opera houses were still running, circus shows were still going on. People were inventing different ways to experience story. The problem we have in Nigeria is we wait until something is done for us to copy. That's how we have approached streaming. That's how we have approached cinema. Okay, we wait for something to be done, by the West, and then we copy, forgetting that the sensibilities are very, very different. The things we care about are completely different from the things they care about. That's a society that spends almost half of the year in their homes because of the cold. It makes a lot of sense to invent television, to invent a lot of things like that. Africa, we're always out in the sun. So why are we limiting our storytelling to stuff people will see inside? That's why 30 December, everybody wants to go outside. When you see Nigerians travel abroad, they are depressed because they are not outside. Why don't we start thinking about entertainment that caters to the idea that we'd rather be outside than inside? So I started thinking, I'm going to reinvent, storytelling, and I'm going to do it by making sure that the audience are part of it. Funny enough, the inspiration came one day I was watching a church, show, and the music minister, he would ginger everybody, hey, we will run around. Then the pastor comes like, Nigerians really love performative stuff. If you go to a church, even a Pentecostal church abroad, it's always very solemn and calm. There's so much on the pulpit. You take all of that in. No, Nigerians must be involved. Okay, so that was kind of like the light bulb. I'm going to create a storytelling medium where the audience will be involved, and it doesn't matter what story we'll do. We can decide to do a Shango story. We can decide to do a story set in the north, but I'm going to reimagine it and ensure that everyone that comes in is going to drop their phone, and they will be part of it. And it worked when we did Forest of Talking Drums. It was crazy, the amount of engagement. People felt like our money is we're playing drums, we are doing all these things. What if that is how African storytelling should look like? That's what we're doing with Immersia, and we're not stopping. It's only going to get bigger from here.
So do you plan on taking Immersia beyond Lagos?
Oh yes. We've had so much pressure. First, the island people are angry that it's only mainland people that are enjoying it. And then there's people, when we did the last one, people came all the way from Benin Republic.
Whoa.
Yes, it was crazy. Ibadan, Abuja, Kwara, Cross River. Those people like, oh my God, they don't want to use this thing. I guess some of the fear was like, what if this is just a one-time thing that they're doing? But we want to be sure, because this is also a business, right? The numbers need to line up. So we want to be able to do this maybe twice or three times, see what we're doing right, what we're fixing, and to better understand how to position it strategically, and then we can start thinking about expansion. But it's going to happen.
Okay. I'm actually looking forward to Immersia coming to Abuja.
So when that time comes, we'll reach out to all of you Abuja influencers.
Very, very well. So now, let's say this is my last question. Maybe, how do you balance speed and quality, both at Immersia and at Anthill proper production?
I think it's a skill. In my early days in Nollywood, when I was mostly a director for hire, this was the reason I used to get hired a lot. The producers have limited time, but they were always looking for someone that even with that limited time, he was going to get the best. There are some of the films that you people love so much. If I tell you the amount of days we shot it, some of my films, you're not going to believe it. I try not to even bother telling anyone about it. I just think it's a skill set. But over the years, I have immersed myself in the idea of what quality should look like. And as a creative, my advice to people is, you might not always know how to make something look great, all right, but you should always know when it's not looking great, when it's wrong. That kind of helps you. Now, if you've taken time to study a lot of work, and that's why as a filmmaker, you should study everything. Don't listen to people who tell you to only watch one kind of film. Watch every kind of film. Watch people's reactions to film. Watch why people love films. Even the films that you say, they are cheesy and ridiculous. There's a reason. There's something people are taking from there. Take all that knowledge. So when you're building your own stuff, you can tell already, this is not going to work. That's not going to work. You also need to have a very sound technical skill set. Filmmaking is an extremely technical activity. The reason we do not have a lot of great films in Nigeria, despite good stories, is because a lot of the directors lack technical skill, right? It is not just what the actors are saying in the scene. It's where you put the camera. It's where you put the actors. It's how you do the lighting. It's what you do with music. Okay. So a director is an extremely technical person. Now look at all the directors that, win Oscars. There are also people where you can tell that they have a solid understanding of the technicalities of their work. They are not the people who sit on chair and say, yeah, now two of you talk, let's go. So you cannot make great films if you do not have sound, technical knowledge. So those are the kind of things that over the years I have built up as skill, and in an instance I can make great things happen within a short time.
Oh, that's a lot, and that's really it's really mind blowing, and I'm really grateful to be privileged to sit next to you. I'm going to say
thank you very much, Mr. Miles.
I will say before Colors of Fire, the last Anthill production I was really invested in was this Latif's film. Was this film Lishabi, because I love epic and I love stories. So that's why I said before Colors of Fire. And Colors of Fire was something that I was personally crazy about. And now getting to Lagos and seeing where Colors of Fire was shot, it took my respect for that movie from 10 to 1 million.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. I can't stop saying thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to more visits.
Please.
I look forward to more talks.
We want people like you to tell our stories. I'm not a celebrity. I don't, the bulk of me you've seen online is because I've been dragged, to come and, talk about my work and my film. I would much rather be in my studio creating. That's where you guys come in, right? Directors really shouldn't have this burden of coming out to talk about their work. As I'm talking to you, I'm already screaming the ideas for the next Immersia show. Whoa. I've moved on. Like, this show is done. I've moved on. We need people like you, visit sets, meet with directors, ask questions, understanding that film is subjective means that you can get the objective truth if you talk to the people behind it. I want people to be able to come and sit down and say, Mr. Niyi, that film, there was this thing I did not like, or there was this thing that people did not like. What do you think, about it? What exactly happened? And you'll be amazed, you're going to get genuine response from people. But it's also a great thing to actually even see the process. I remember inviting, a friend who used to be a critic, to set. And while we were filming, the lead actor just disappeared. He didn't come on set that day. So I told the guy, I said, we've paid for this location almost 2 million naira. I think it was like a hotel or something. This actor is gone. We're going to lose this day. What it means is that everything we're planning to shoot today, we're going to combine it with tomorrow. So instead of having 10 scenes per day, we're going to shoot 20 scenes tomorrow. How do we push creativity? When that, as I said, you would never know if you didn't experience it. So that's part of the stories that also need to be told. As much as we take the work of filmmakers and we tear it apart, which is great, we need to have that sense of, you're not the best, there's always, I've heard different opinions, even on Colors of Fire. We love it. The balance is that also tell the other stories, the behind the scenes, the work that went through some of these things. Like, people should have been on the set of Lishabi, and Colors of Fire to even see the creativity, how we solve problems, the things that you like, how even those things were achieved. So I'm hoping to see more from people like you, and that's why I'm glad to have this interview. So thank you very much, Mr. Miles.
Thank you very much for having me, sir. Thank you very much.